Hey guys, welcome to the Game Dev Discussion Podcast. This is episode 28 and I'm your host Alex Beddoes. This podcast is the official podcast for the Dynasty Empire. And today we have the freelance artist Ronan Mahon on. How are we doing, dude?
Hey Alex, I'm good. I'm pretty stressed. No time, freelance artists. We don't have enough hours in the day. But
yeah, if you could, you stretch a day out for another. You'd have 30-hour days if you could.
Yeah, 30-hour days is probably about right.
Dude, this is really timely because I've had a lot of people inbox me asking to speak to both someone who lives the freelance lifestyle and someone who is sort of adhering tools and tool development. So you seem to tick both boxes.
Yeah, I think not by design. I sort of fell into all of these things, but yeah, those are my passion. Art.
So, your background, you're an environment artist. Well, you was an environment artist in AAA. I just want to spend a little bit of time to sort of just lay some groundwork. How did you find your time in AAA? Because obviously you're currently a freelance artist. How did you find your time in AAA? What bits did you enjoy? What bits did you not enjoy so much? And I'm guessing you found some pitfalls or sort of places to slip up within that side of the industry.
Yeah, so my background is in AAA. Actually, I started out in 2D animation back in Dublin.
Oh, really?
Which is like hand-drawn, sort of flipping and rolling pages, Disney style. But it's pretty hard to get a job in that, and you have to draw 24 for 1 second. So kind of got bored of that pretty quick, and did architectural visualization for a little while. And then I really wanted to get into games. Luckily, the ArchViz stuff was a little bit of an easy segue into environment art. You're telling the world. So that was when I moved to the UK, joined Free Radical Design.
Mm-hmm.
The guys who did and all. That was a pretty interesting introduction. A junior environment artist. You just go in with your bright eyes. Oh, exciting video games.
Yeah.
It was just at the end of Haze, which wasn't received that well, which is tricky enough to be in a studio, where the audience maybe aren't enjoying your game, and you have to try and stay motivated.
Mm-hmm.
And then I joined Timesplitter's team, did a bit of work on that, and after there about a year, and then I encountered that thing that a lot of people in video games encounter with redundancy, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like Christmas, the week of Christmas. You turn up to work and the doors are closed, and go to this hotel in 2 hours, and then when you go there, it's like, okay, all these people go into this room, and these 20 others go into that room, and so pretty much everybody, 90% of people, let go. So that was really tough, and it. In a way, I guess, silver linings in that it sort of teaches you a hard lesson about loyalties, where you should put them, and who you should invest in and what you should invest in.
Did that change you at all? Did that change the way you sort of viewed the industry and viewed everything? Was just right?
Yeah,
I
think so, because leading up to that point, there was sort of rumors within the company, and we were told, oh no, it's going to be fine, it's all good. And a few people who'd been around and in the industry for a while sort of said to people, make your own plan and sort yourselves out. At the time I thought, hey, this is my first job and I'm really enjoying this, and I think they said it must be fine. But it wasn't, they were just trying to keep things going until whatever, either they sorted out the publishing issues and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So it sort of taught me that it's great to be invested in a business and a company and the people that you work with, but at the end of the day you do have to look out for yourself. And if I could go back to myself then, I sort of knew 6 months beforehand it wasn't great. I would have done preparation then, make sure my portfolio's today, make sure I'm ready in case it happened. And I wasn't, and I sort of stayed on the sinking ship to the end, and then you're left at Christmas with no money, no severance, I wasn't entitled to any severance pay because I hadn't been there for 2 years. But that was tough. And,
Yeah.
you're going through Christmas. Okay. And plus, I'm from Dublin and I'd gone home for Christmas. So I'm like, great, I have to fly back to the UK. I'm still paying rent. I don't have a job. Some people are like, oh, just don't even bother to stay back home. Don't even go back,
Mm-hmm.
But I was like, no, I have to go back. I have to put myself over there under that pressure, and that'll get me through it, which I did. And it was fine in the end. I went to Rebellion in Oxford and worked on some really fun projects. So it worked out, but it did definitely teach me a lesson about being prepared, about loyalties. I mean, it's great to be, whenever I'm working somewhere, I'm fully invested. I'm trying to do the best of my ability and bring the best art to the job. But just having that understanding that it's business, it's personal, it's business, to understand that it's a transaction. And if you're not getting what you need out of the transaction, you need to confident enough stuff. And it's not like, I think I saw a bit of that at the time when I was just joining, and I sort of mistook it for like disloyalty, and these people are sort of troublemakers. A few guys are like, oh no, you should prepare to do whatever you have to do. But I think looking back, I realized you're a little bit naive and you sort of go in a bit bright-eyed. So that was tough enough, but yeah, learned a valuable lesson there, just to be prepared and to, of course, invest in your work, but
have always just be ready for the worst at all times.
Yeah. So then I went to Rebellion. I worked on Alien vs Predator, which was a cool project, great IP, fun world, Geiger stuff and all that. So that was good. Great art there as well. Did Never Dead as well, which is sort of a Konami public.
Mm-hmm.
Totally weird and different. And then finally ended up in Rocksteady, working on. I joined just at the end of Arkham City, beginning of Arkham Knight.
Yep.
So, I mean, that was my dream job. Okay. I can't believe I got the job.
Yeah.
And that place is amazing. Sefton and Jamie, who run the place, their attitude to the work sort of comes from the top down. Because I've worked in a few places over the years where you don't even know who the boss is, and they're in a separate sort of office.
Yeah.
Here it was like they're on the floor. Sefton's the lead game designer. You can go over and talk to him. There's a lot of passion, and they focus on quality and has to be best, and that's what attracted really people there.
So yeah. So from that, you're at Rocksteady. You're enjoying it. How did the transition come about between you being obviously in a AAA studio to deciding you wanted to be a freelance artist?
It was kind of a slow thing, really. I was there in total for nearly 7 years, which is a long time in gaming.
Yeah.
I think eventually it was sort of my own personal life that became an issue. We wanted to have a family, myself and my wife, and Rocksteady is right in the heart of London, and it's super expensive. It's just simple things like, if kind of like the maturing of this industry, but you have to deal with families and kids and things, and it was like, if we want to have a kid and we put them in childcare, it was 1,000 or 1,200 a month.
Mm-hmm.
Correct, So my wife would end up, her whole salary would go on that stuff, and we wouldn't even get to see our child that much. Not sure if this is going to be a great fit. And it was tough because on the one hand, I had a dream job, but on the other hand, I realised that it didn't quite fit with family life.
Yeah.
And they do their best there, and they go above and beyond, also vouchers, and you can sit down and talk to them about but just a tough place to live, expensive.
No, that's fair enough.
Yeah, so that was that, and yeah, we were just about to. Well, we had plans to actually just buy a house. We were like, okay, well, this we'll be a little bit further out. We'll commute in, but that will be kind of like our castle, and we can do it that way. And then we had an offer down on a house, and then that was the week that Brexit happened. So it was like, hey, cool, here's this really nice house. I think, yeah, this is going to be, and here's me, you know, I'm going to, another 10 years, 20 years here, I love the place. Then this, can't believe we voted to leave.
Wow.
And of course, the person who owned the house pulled out, and everybody pulled out, and nobody was answering phone calls anymore and stuff. And it was okay. Well, that was that.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a bit of a shock. It's like, on the one hand, we were prepared to sort of say, okay, let's commit now properly, and then it was the rug pulled under you, which took me a while to get over. So we kind of, hung around for another year, I think it was, trying to see if we could figure it out. I mean, the projects were all great, and working in studios, it's a stellar example of sort of how to do it, but it just didn't work eventually, and I sort of felt responsible then. It's like, okay, I'm forcing my family to live here. You know, my wife loves that I love my job and pay well, and I'll do that to them. You know, we've spent 7 or 8 years here in London, essentially for me in a way.
Yeah.
So let's see what I can do. I had a few people I knew from AAA who'd sort of made that jump, and I got in touch with a few of them, environment artists, and asked them, how does it look? What's the route? You know, is it survivable?
Mm-hmm.
I'm silly to do this. And a few of them got back and said, yeah, it's tough, but possible. So I thought, okay, my wife is German as well, so the whole Brexit thing was going to cause all sorts of issues eventually. So we try to decide between Germany or Ireland, and in the end we decided with Germany. Said, okay, well, my cost of living will be lower, so have a little bit less risk. I'll make this happen, you know. So that was it. Just said from one day, it was literally from one day to the other. It's like, let's just go. We've thought about this enough. I feel a bit of responsibility because, yeah, Rockstar is like a family, but as well as that, it's like, this will be exciting. This will be different. So I kind of just moved without any sort of plans or any jobs in place or any work in place.
What's the process then? Like you said, right, I want to be a freelance artist. You know, did you focus on, okay, I need to set up like a brand for myself? Do I need to, you know, talk to people? How did you decide on setting your rates? All this kind of stuff, like, because there's got to be a lot of planning in there to figure all that sort of stuff out.
Yeah, and I probably went in naive and probably didn't even know to think about a lot of that stuff, you know. And it becomes a shock because you work for years in studios, you've got a very set structure, you've got a set reporting sort of hierarchy, you've got your lead artist, or you've got an art director you work with, used to all that structure, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, that's all gone now, and you're your own boss, which is amazing, but it also means you have to decide what to do. So I think I started with, I need a little bit of time off, so let's just move over there. And actually we were just about to have our second child, so I was like, okay, take some time off, do a little bit of soul searching, and our son, spend some time. I'll take two or 3 months off. We'd saved a bit of money and see where my head goes. And I think at that time I sort of made like a mind map or something. I think pre-mind, just to sort of make a mind map of what do I want to do, what do I think is useful, what do I like doing. Because I had a lot of experience in studios, and I kind of knew if I maybe was to work for studios what they would need or what they would like to see from me. So my passion's always been art, it's always been creating things, telling stories. I'm excited by that, so I knew that of course that has to be the center of it all, otherwise it won't work. So yeah, I made my mind map of my skills. It's predominantly environment art, so I started to focus on that. And like I said, I got in touch with a few other environment artists, and they suggested, well, you can either do direct freelance client work, or you sell your own stuff online. Because it's become very easy now to directly sell to people. So I thought, okay, I'll do both. I'll try and do a mixture of everything. I'll try and have some online stores, because I want to just make my own things. You know, I want to have my own brief. I want to have my own sort of concept, and then I'll also see if I can get client work directly for studios in some capacity through Environment Art. So yeah, that was it. I sort of made a plan, and I decided to start with the online stores because the pressure wasn't so high on me at that point to make money. You know, I had a few months worth of savings, so I was like, okay, if I'm ever going to do this, I'll do this now while I don't actually have to like hand to mouth just
Yeah.
Weirdly, I thought to myself, what do I need? When you're in studios, you have access to training and material libraries, and you have subscriptions to everything. But when you're freelance, you got to pay for that all yourselves, and you don't want to start out with a load of big overheads. You know, paying 10 different things. So I'd seen Substance did a little tutorial on using your phone just to make materials, and I thought, well, I really need a material library if I'm going to be sort of making environment art. So I thought, I'll follow this tutorial, then I'll have a load of materials I can use myself. Maybe I'll sell it as well. So everything that I was doing, I thought it'll have 3 or 4 uses or outcomes. So I started with the material library, and I did I followed that tutorial, and I did my fabric collection.
Yeah.
So this was just me. That was the other thing I was thinking. I was like, materials is a very competitive corner of the market, if you like. There's a lot of big people working in it. You know, you got C Textures, or you got even Substance themselves with their source library. So I felt like kind of have to maybe go a bit more niche, because if I just start doing concrete and wood and stuff, just an ocean of that stuff there, and there's only so many ways you can do it. Maybe you could go stylized if you wanted to be niche, but so I said maybe I'll do fabric, because I know from my experience anyway, it was hard to get maybe good fabric materials or good material responses and realistic results. So I focused on that, and I spent way too long on this little project making fabric. I built my own little home rig scanner. Because I didn't just want to use my phone. I like a DSLR, and it took me like a month or so. But I was enjoying it, and it kind of worked for the time I had at the time, because my son was born. And then, that took longer than I thought. But in the end, I had this pack of like 50 fabric materials, and I spent some time trying to think about how to market it. And I always like to just show, don't tell. Don't try and just tell people what it is. Just make the best little showcase of it.
Yeah.
And put it out there. Don't have people trying to ask questions about what you're buying. It's just like, this is. So I put it out there, and it was really successful, and it got a lot of people's attention. It just kind of blew up a little bit. I sort of was just doing it for myself initially, like, I'll get a material library, this will be the beginning of it. And then it's like, okay, now I'll sell it. And through that, and because I did it in Unreal, you know, Epic saw it, and a lot of people saw it, and it was quite exciting, actually. And it was nice to, even though it wasn't what I'd planned to do in the start, I was like, oh, I'll make great environments. It was like, oh, I'm making materials, okay. Just because I was interested in it, it kind of pushed me to do a job I could with it. That went really well.
I was gonna say, that's quite interesting. So you approached it from, okay, I had all this resource available to me in AAA. I need that resource as a freelancer, and I don't want to obviously pay a lot of overhead. I'm guessing this is what's led you to your filter for Substance Painter with Filter. I'm guessing that's where that's come from. Is like, you just like, I had all this resource in the studio, which was these really useful filters and stuff. You're like, well, I need that as a freelancer, and I'm guessing that's your line of thinking for that too.
Yeah, I mean, because of course some things are probably worth buying and paying for. Sometimes you have to be methodical and sit down and go, okay, I can need to pay 30 quid a month and have access to this thing, or I can go and do it myself. And you do have to be a bit more cold-hearted with your time when you're a freelancer, because time is money, you know.
Yeah.
But I was approaching it from, I will need all this stuff. I need to work probably quite fast when I'm working for myself to be able to turn things around quickly. I'll need to be a one-man studio, so I kind of need these little arms, these little stores of things to help me do that. And the other thought was usually just going back to thinking about my work in AAA and in studios and just going, what was really annoying me? What did I just keep doing over and over again? Because I'm just lazy, I guess, is the answer. I don't like repetitive tasks. So with Filter, which is a filter for substance, I have all these nice materials, but some of them are kind of limited. They're just like, hey, it's gold or whatever. And I know that all it takes is, a simple roughness change or a simple bit of height change, and it becomes a different material and has greater use. And I found myself just repetitively doing the same process whenever I'm texturing. I'd put on my base material and then I'd do some weathering or grind pass, if you like. It's just slow, boring, and I kind of do the same thing each time. And so I started to play around with. It started out very simple, just like, I just want to add a bit of roughness to it, and then I just kind of fell down the rabbit hole of designer, because I wasn't really a designer expert in any form, but I knew that I loved Painter, and I knew that to feed Painter I needed to work in designer to make tools. But that was my approach, and I don't think I've ever been a natural at some of this, if you like, tech art, if you want to call it. I don't think that comes to me naturally at all. In fact, I struggle a lot sometimes with shaders and materials and stuff. Maybe I've never been good at math or any of those. I'm very just visual, kind of artistic in that way, but the technical side doesn't come naturally to me. But I guess I just chip away at it. Start very simple and just go, okay, here's 2 nodes, and I want to see what that does when I apply it, and just slowly build the complexity that way. And all of a sudden, I found a few little tips and tricks. I watched some tutorials. I saw some people who had made filters before, and realized, this could be really good, and it can interpret and look at the underlying textures and sample them and start to make really interesting weathering and grime that isn't just plastered on top. It actually sort of respects the underlying surface and starts to fill in the cracks. So that was where Filter came from, and kind of started simple and then got more complex, and then took longer than I expected, as usual, which is another thing you realize as freelancers, like, these ideas in your head, how long things will take is wrong. And it turned into quite a nice tool that was quite quick. You could apply it to material and adds grime instantly, and you can do it, turn on and off. I just kind of made the parameters that I thought I need. I'm essentially just making things for myself.
But it's quite an interesting way of approaching it, because from working with AAA, it's like I can understand the whole it's something I don't think, when you look from the outside in, you see people make all this great art, and like, I remember watching Ben Wilson's GDC talk, where he's on about, he has this big library of stuff from Machine Games from his time there. He's like, with this big library of stuff, so when we're creating these scenes, we have all this library stuff. And when you're on the outside looking in, you just see the end product. You're like, wow, that's amazing. But you don't see any of the tools that AAA can lend you. So it's quite an interesting way of approaching it, going like, okay, I'm a freelancer. What tools did I have that I would love to have now? And you're like, okay, so you had your materials library, this filter you made, which is really, really damn good. Like, it's a really, really nice filter. Is there any other things like you think in AAA, which you have in AAA, which outside of it you don't have, that you think you'd want?
I guess, the trouble I have as a freelancer is that you kind of have to compete with a whole studio, and every one of those people is a specialist, and they have such great knowledge. So it's difficult to single out any one thing just yet, because I just kind of slowly bumble my way through what I need next. I think yeah, the training and the access to all the information and knowledge of the people around you is something I'm missing, and I don't really know how you fill that gap.
Dude, I'd say I feel like gap. Give our station learning.
Sorry.
Dude, give our station learning another like few months. Once we get past all the beginner stuff, I can't wait to see what that evolves into. I was literally just talking to my to the Decagon guys about this. Like the fact that you can have this big library of experts at your fingertips, like Leonard says himself, like Netflix for art. I'm just like, once we get past this beginner stuff, and I can literally tune in and go, right, I'm really struggling. I want to learn Marvelous Designer, and there's a host of Marvelous Designer tutorials right there. Or I'm like, oh, I want to pick up Modo, host of Modo tutorials. It's like, for me, I cannot wait until ArtStation gets to that stage.
I've been really excited by that because I do have ArtStation Pro because I have an online store there as well. So more benefit to me, great. And also, I had to start to reach out and find that knowledge in, like, the Dynasty, the Discord servers and stuff I never really did for years. When you're deep in sort of AAA, I feel like there's a lot of people there you'll never hear from, never hear about, and probably don't promote themselves or anything.Ey're just deep in fighting for those companies. But that was another shock for me, because yes, I had ArtStation and things like that, but I was always sort of a lurker. I was never that involved. I would sort of always watch things and, of course, the people that I'd followed, but I never really participated. And that was a new thing for me, having left AAA, like the social side of things, having to network, having to put yourself out there. And that's a big part of freelance as well that I wasn't aware of, I guess, is spend a lot of your time not doing art. You kind of maybe make the assumption when you're starting freelance, I'll have all this time to myself to do exactly the things that I want, but actually there's a whole load of new things that you didn't know about. So that was another for me, I guess.
I suppose you also got to think of it as I know something I always think about is as an artist, you sort of got to market yourself as a business. You are essentially a business. You provide a service. Yeah. So I suppose anything you do on the side, which you sort of obviously have your bracket of like, this is my freelance work. You almost I always think of it as my personal work is an opportunity to advertise your freelance or your skills. So it's like, if
or maybe you're playing the long game with some of that work as well.
What do you mean?
I think this could be a thing. Like maybe you've got a personal project that might morph into something a bit like how Filter came from my fabric collection, because I made all my fabric collection, but they're all vanilla sort of based materials, and I didn't want to scan in any of that extra sort of noisy detail or any dirt that would ruin all the tiling. And then I realized, well, I need to now also bring that back in. So that's kind of maybe where Filter came from. So with my own sort of personal stuff is like, these are the little bit of me time, the long-term potential could be something. I don't know. All I know is I'm excited to do, I don't know, I was looking at a lot of, I don't know, synthwave neon stuff. I'll do an environment like that, and I don't know what will come from it, and it's still sort of chipping away in the background. Yeah, you do have to be aware of your time and what you're spending on, because money, I mean, I've got a family to support. I'm the only person earning right now, so I can't really afford to go, hey, let's just take a week off.
Yeah, but I suppose
I have to plan it in.
Yeah, your personal work and advertise that. Like, so say for example, everyone knows you for, I don't know, this the Filter and the fabric collection and that side of stuff, and suddenly maybe in your spare time you start developing, I don't know, marvelous skills, and you learn like Marvelous Designer, just hypothetically, and you do all this stuff, you do all this experimentation, and you have this stuff ready. I suppose you can think of it as your personal work and your time spent on that. When you then post that online, you're not just posting a piece of art online, you're posting and letting the world know, hey, by the way, I do this other thing as well. As a freelancer, you know me as this, but I also just do this other thing. And the whole world can then go, oh, actually, if we ever need that, I can go to that person.
And as a freelancer, you kind of have to, well, it does help to be a bit of a generalist, which I sort of found out through accident. So I'd spent maybe 3 or 4 months doing this whole startup stuff, learning the ropes, getting used to working for myself. Then Algorithmic at the time put out a competition for the Exion car contest, which was a Substance Painter texturing contest where they provide the model, and it was a short deadline. It was only 3 weeks, coming up to Christmas, so I'd maybe a lot on it. I thought, I've always wanted to do a car. I've never really done much vehicle stuff, and I know I could do a nice job texturing it, and I was quite into Unreal at the time. When I was promoting my fabric stuff, I learned a lot about sequencer and how to shoot camera work and stuff, so I thought, hey, I'll enter this competition, and actually I've got free time to do it now, which not a lot of people have, you know, like I didn't have any other jobs and stuff at the time, so okay, I'll go hardcore on this. And so I did the competition. I wanted to do something a bit different, so the car had like 2 states. So there's like the state during the daytime where it just looks like a nicely textured super or hypercar, and then my idea was that under dark light or at nighttime, all of a sudden it comes to life and you see all these patterns that were there before, but they were only in the roughness, a little bit normal, you know, you didn't really notice them, and then it all comes to life. So I did that project, put a lot into it, and presenting it in Unreal, learning the sequence. I was just excited. I was excited to make a car. I really like synthwave. I was listening to lots of music, and I had to make another filter in Substance Designer just to do the ideas that. So I was like, I don't know where this is taking me. I'm not really an expert in any of this stuff, but let's go. And I nearly missed deadline as well. That was funny. It was like they'd put some deadline of like 8 o'clock in the morning of the day, and I hadn't pulled an all-nighter in years on this, you know, once you're in studios and stuff. And then all of a sudden I was like brought back to my college days, and like my wife was looking at me, she's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm just nearly done, but it won't render," you know. And it was crashing for whatever reason, and I think I had half an hour. Anyway, I got the video in, and I got the images in.
It came out sick. I have to say, I really, really like that. It's one of those things. So, like, as a sort of an environment artist, and as I suppose I don't want to call it technical, but like I understand how art's made. There's the odd piece that comes along where I'm like, I just like that as art. So like examples of that, Chris Radsby's Beneath the Waves, like that's the sort of thing I'd hang up on a wall. Jasmine's recent Art Station challenge, I'd post that on my wall. And your art piece for the car and with the paint and everything, I'm like, I'd have that on my wall as a piece of art. Not, you know, I completely ignored the fact that all the technical stuff goes behind it. Didn't even come into my mind. Normally when I look at a piece of art, I'm looking at it, I sort of go, oh, I can see where they used designer there, and I can see what they did with painter. Yeah. I remember seeing that and just being like, I'm just looking at it as a piece of art and not thinking about the technical behind the scenes stuff. I know it's so nice.
It's nice that you say that, because I don't know what it is. Over the years, like, I call myself an artist. I enjoy art. I don't like to get too. It's weird that I actually release tools and a few little things, because funnily enough, I don't like to get bogged down in tools or to be a specialist in one particular program. I feel like programs come and go. If you're not learning them, you'll probably get left behind, so you need to know about these things. But I would rather strip away, you know, all the technique and focus on what's the message, what's the feeling am I supposed to get from this, what passion behind it. Don't
you find it difficult when I'm not isn't it hard? Because you understand it, you know what you're looking at.
Yeah, you have to work very hard to get past all the I guess the making of all the modelling is I try not to make that the subject of what I'm doing. I try not to make it like, this is a hard surface modelling piece, I'm going to suggest it as such. It's more like, I want to tell a story about, I don't know, that robot or whatever it is, you know. It's more about that. It's about story behind it. So for my art, I try and focus on making something that's interesting or that I'm passionate about or interested in, rather than, you know, focusing too much on the technique. You have to, I guess, know how to use programs and stuff. But to get beyond the process and start to think about what's the theme, or what am I trying to say? That's more interesting for me, because programs will come and go, and what's really realistic now change. So I feel like,
I think you know what that explains why maybe it does so well, because like I think I'm not going to speak for him, but I think that's how Chris Raspberry likes to think as well. Like, it's a very expressive, artistic process, and I think that's probably why pieces like yourself and his speak so much to people, like as an artistic piece. Because for example, I don't think like that. I'm very much pragmatic. Like, I have a skill I want to develop, and what's the best sort of medium for me to execute learning that skill. And it's very black and white, pragmatic approach to it. But none of my pieces so go on.
Yeah, I guess my point is, like, once you get to that point, like once you've dedicated all that time, the question is what are you going to do with it? Is your point is it just that you enjoy learning things, which is totally fine as well. Usually for me, it's like, okay, if I want to learn how to do those amazing renders and stuff, then what? What do I want to show with it that's actually worth seeing or exciting or different? Because that's probably what interests me more.
Do you think that's experience that leads you to be able to be like that? Because for me, I still think of it as I have a checkbox to fill in order to get hired or to get work. Do you think you're at a stage where like you?
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'm privileged in that way that, of course, I have to.
Privilege isn't a word I'd use, dude. You worked your ass off to get this.
Yeah, but eventually you get to a point where you're like, okay, you've worked on a few really nice projects, and kind of start to wonder, what am I doing with this skill or not? Is it that I just want to make the next game, or do I want to try and do different? I think that's just what interests me, because eventually, you do have to put the work initially, and you have to learn how to use these programs stuff initially. That's also exciting. I still like learning things, but then you get to a point where you're like confident enough to try and do something a bit different.
Is there any skills?
That was the thing with the car. I was like, I want to present this a bit differently. Let's do a video. And then I was looking at the car. I was like, well, it's just a shell of a car. It's fine. It's beautiful. But what could make it more exciting? What story could I tell? So then I started having the Unreal mannequin guy get into the car, and it was all really like, I should put some screenshots out of what it looked like outside of the camera again. It's like where the guy's all mangled. I just played one of his like walk cycles or something and just sort of shoved him into the car. But I was like, okay, the story is it's got this amazing car. It's midnight. He just wants to go for a drive, So that helped me guide me for it to not just be about texturing. Here's the normal app all that stuff's important. You need all that to get there. How's this exciting and different? And let's make a little story. And I think maybe that's what some people responded. And I did get an award from for storytelling.
Oh, dude, it is a deserved award. I'm trying to remember all of your experience you're just talking about. It is a quote. I remember. I can't remember who it's from. It's a psychoanalytic figure. I think it might be Carl Jung. I'm obviously paraphrasing, but it's like something about your early part of your life or your adulthood. You're on an apprenticeship to learn a craft, and then once you've learned it, you then go on an apprenticeship to relearn the ability to enjoy your craft and basically be a kid again, and enjoy your time again. And you have to go through this process. And it pretty sounds like what you've gone through. Like, you go through your initial stage where you're training and sort of, like I said, you're on an apprenticeship to teach yourself these skills. And then once you reach a certain point, you've got to learn to just enjoy making what you're making and go past the practical. Yeah,
I think now that you say it, if I look back on my early positions, the jobs and stuff, I was maybe more like what you said, focused on learning the ropes, understanding the hierarchy, getting to know getting all the knowledge I needed to be the best at what I did in environment art. And I focused, a lot on the technique, rendering technique, modeling techniques. And then eventually, you get to a point where you're like, okay, so now what? What do I do with that? Do I just keep making the same thing over and over again. So,
And
yeah, my early days were sort of understanding what skills I needed and what programs, and then it was like, what am I going to do with it? Or what excites me about it, what keeps me going, because you have to be motivated as a freelancer. It's very easy to lose half a day or a day if you're not focused on something, Be like, I don't know what I'm doing, what am I excited by this project? So that's an important thing as a freelancer. Is obviously it's important to get jobs, to get work and pay bills and stuff, but there is a bit of a trap there, and luckily a good friend of mine sort of said that to me at the beginning. He said, just remember why you're doing this and why you're working for yourself.
yeah,
Work for yourself, you want to have your own concepts and thoughts and put your own art out there, or rather than you can get very focused on making ends meet or trying to be good at be good as a freelancer, if you like. I've got lots of projects on, I've got a million jobs lined up, but he said, like, you're just working for other people again, in a different way, and maybe with less benefits. You don't have holidays and all that.
Yeah, you don't have the safety net
built in. Yeah, so he's like, just be careful you don't just start, hopefully and luckily when you start to get those first maybe projects coming along, that you don't just dive in head first. Just have a second to think about what you actually want to do, what you want to be specialized in, for example, because once you start down that path, you easily end up to your eyes in stress and not enjoying what you do. And
I want to run an idea past you. I saw a tweet about 4 days ago, and I've been really thinking about it. I'm like, I don't know if I agree with this, if it's a stupid idea. Someone basically said, freelancers, you're out there and you have to turn down work. Eventually you get to the point where you've got so much stuff coming in that you have to turn stuff down in order to maintain, some sanity. And basically the tweet read, instead of doing that, here's a thought: hire a junior or have like a freelance junior work for you, and you distribute work back down to them. And I guess
it depends.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah,
no,
sorry,
I want to hear your thought. I just want to hear your thoughts on it, because I see it as like, I'm like, at first I was like, that's a great idea, that's brilliant, that's like, but then I'm like, oh damn, then you got all this stress of managing this person, making sure their work kept up, and by that point you're creating another job in itself, so you're not really alleviating the problem. So I'm just curious, like, what your thoughts on that.
It goes back to your motivations and your ideas behind why you started out as a freelancer. I mean, it might be through necessity, but for me it was a choice. And that kind of has come up as well, you get too busy to do all the work. If my idea was that I wanted to make my own studio and that's what I was passionate about, that would be a great idea, I think, because that would be the beginning of that sort of road, I think. And a few of my good friends have done that, Dennis Rutovsky, who worked at Rocksteady, went over to Ukraine, started the Art Corps with a colleague of his, and now they've got it's like 20 or 30 employees, and he's really, that's what he's an amazing environment artist, and he still gets to do some of that as well, but he's also very passionate about his business, building that structure of people around him. For me, that really isn't my motivation, and I did have to do a bit of that in AAA, because eventually you reach a point where you either get asked to do management, or if you're very lucky and only in a few studios, it's like, would you like to be more like a principal artist, where you're focused on trying to be the best, say, artist, and to try and spread that knowledge back to the other artist team and help them that way. I did do management, and I did find it interesting in its own way, but at some points it got to a point where I was spending my time managing other people and giving them briefs and maybe trying to communicate with them what ideas I had in my head, and found some of that difficult. So I was lucky enough to experience that. That sort of knew that's not really what to do. But I don't think that's saying that that's a bad idea. But it sort of starts to lead you down a path of the next logical step for that is, hey, let's get more people. And I guess, A lot of artists have done that.
That's fair enough. Yeah, I suppose that is a logical step. Is that right? It is just a step towards your own studio, I suppose. At that point,
Yeah.
what so you've had like you've just alluded to, you've had a lot of experience in AAA, and you had a chance to experience the sort of the management side of stuff, and now you've had a good amount of time as a freelancer. You know, I was wondering if you could just like pitch the two against each other. What are the pros and cons? What bits did you do you miss from AAA? What bits do you think freelance helps with? What is like what negatives are in freelance that you sort of miss from AAA? That type of thing. You have to put the two against each other.
So I guess I probably spent 10 or 12 years in studios, AAA. So I have a lot of experience with that. I've only done freelance for a year, so I don't like to say that I'm an expert in any way. Really, it's only been a year. But in terms of comparing the two, and maybe my conceptions of what they were like, I think I thought that I would have a lot of freedom to make as much art as I want, because sometimes in studios, you get bogged down in meetings, scheduling, and all those things that sometimes you think, only I had a day just to make art again, and I'd get something done. Freelance, there's a lot of time spent doing other things other than art. Gotta understand how to run a business, gotta understand how to read contracts, and how to understand what's important in contracts. You gotta read all those things, things that normally you just sign on the line. Now it actually has importance to it, like how long am I in this contract for? What are my rights? Are they getting the rights to everything that I do, or are they just licensing it? When can I get terminated or not? Can I stop the contract? What are my payment terms? There's a good I think it's Freelance on Reddit is good for getting an overview of some of the important, just even about contracts and taxes and all those things. I had to get an accountant, and I'm in a different country, and every country has their own tax laws and stuff. Oh man, I spent 3 months at one point trying to ask one simple question, and like clear as mud, even when you're talking to your tax advisor, about how you're supposed to invoice things and all this. And if you mess those things up, you're like, oh great, and then I'm going to get hit with a massive bill, fine. So there's lots of stuff there that I didn't know you have to do, and you have to self-promote, which I didn't do that really at all when I was working AAA. You're sort of just in the zone, you're cushy, you have your job, you're focused on, I was anyway, doing my artwork for that company. They were paying me, and that's where I put my effort. That was new for me. I had to join Facebook and stuff again, stuff I hadn't had for years, just because you have to have all these things. People need to know about your work if you want them to hire you.
Yeah.
So, those are some of the cons. Those are some of the sort of like day-to-day things. But the pros, for me, definitely are like, it does come with freedom and flexibility. I've got 2 little kids, and I can pretty much drop anything at no notice and just go and help out. If the kids just start burning the house, I can just come out of my room and go, what is going on here? And we can just sit down for a bit, and that's fine. And I don't have to ask anyone to do that. And most of the time as a freelancer, you set your own hours. Usually you're agreeing to provide something to somebody. You're like, I'll do that for you. I'm going to do this project. It's usually, and it shouldn't really be, that they're micromanaging your day anyway. You're not an employee anymore. You're more saying the service. And most of the people that I've worked with, it's not really, you do have maybe a set amount of hours you have to give them, but it's down to you how you provide that to them. And the main thing, they're just looking at the end result usually. So the flexibility is perfect for me with my own family, which I just couldn't get. So we can spend lots of time with them. My wife at home. Yeah, it's really amazing, and it's quite empowering to work for yourself, to put something out there and make a product, and sort of put it out there and wonder, hey, are people going to enjoy that? Is that going to work? And some of the things I've done just haven't gone anywhere, and then weirdly people pick up on other stuff. So that's quite exciting. The pay is quite good when you get going. You know, on the flip side, like when I was starting out, you had no income, but now the pay is quite good if you can get projects sort of lined up. So now, you know, you're living in a lower cost area and you're getting paid quite well. So if, you know, when the times are good, it's really good. And I'm just working from home. I'm just working from my little office. But I'm working with US clients, or I'm working with European clients, or I'm just making stuff for my store. So quite empowering. And the stores are quite good to sort of even out some of the bumpiness of freelance contract work. You know, you might have gaps in there, and then the stores tend to just kind of tick over in the background if you've got a good product. And it's, I mean, none of my stuff is sort of sold ridiculously in any way. I couldn't really live off on its own, but it's slowly building in the background. That's some of my longer term stuff. Just keep putting things on there, keep making little sales. People like your stuff and they'll ask you for more. So the pay is good when it kind of gets going, but you do have to build in, understand the risk and know that you won't always be employed and stuff. So not employed, you won't always have work.
So that sounds. I suppose that's the interesting bit, is people dealing with the downs. You know, like I said, the lack of money or lack of income. Setting up precautionary things, like you said, the stores sound like a great way to just make sure you get at least something coming in to tick you over.
Yeah, I mean, and if on the off chance that you make really, I'm sure there's plenty of people that just live off those that they found their niche and really want to focus on that. I think I could do that as well. I had a good start to my stores. My issue was I did need some sort of short-term money at that point. It's like you could either have the guaranteed return of this client work or continue on your stores. So I decided to split my time rather than take too much risk and just, because you don't know. You do your best understanding of if your product's any good, and you might talk to people in your field and talk to your audience. You know, when I made the filter thing, it was really good to be on the Empire and just ask a few people if they'd like to try it out and give me some feedback whether or not I was onto something that was interesting. So, but you just don't know, I guess, if it's really going to work out. So
that's fair enough. So I want to ask a question, and you're going to be a very interesting person to ask this question to, because you've got some life experience, man. Like, you've been through some really rough times. Like I said, the whole redundancy thing around Christmas is like about as low as I think you can come as an artist. That sucks.
Yeah, and it's in the game industry. Sometimes it's sort of close by. I think at Rebellion we had a point as well where we let some people go because things weren't going so well. It's a funny little industry. It's like it kind of based on passion. So sometimes, you know, we're going to try a little, which is kind of comes back to my point of like making sure that you're okay with the situation, you're okay with the transaction. Am I getting enough out of this for this to be worth it?
So what advice would you give yourself then if you had to go back and speak to you when you're like, say, 17, 18? What would you give yourself any advice, or would you let yourself go through all of it again?
I'll definitely go through all of it again. I'm very lucky that what I was excited about and what I enjoy turned out to be something to make a living from. And I think at that time, like 16, 17, I was like doing drawings and drawing mech warriors and stuff, and on online forums and IRC and stuff, just doing fan art. I had like DeviantArt account and stuff. And I remember, my family's really supportive, so if you're interested, do that. But you of course think, I'm not really sure it's gonna work. So I think if I could talk to myself, it'd be great to reassure myself to have the confidence to follow what you're definitely passionate. It just keeps you going, you know. I can sit down now. Sometimes, you know, something might happen with the kids during the day, and maybe I can't work for a few hours and flip it to, okay, I'll do some work in the evening. And if I didn't enjoy what I did, I don't think I could do that. So I think I would just tell myself, to have confidence to follow through with it.
Dude, that's fantastic. I need to say we're gonna wrap up, but I've really enjoyed speaking to you, man. There's some really interesting bits in there.
Hopefully, it wasn't too airy fairy and sort of.
No. I don't think it was at all, man. I think there's some seriously, especially the freelance stuff, man. Like, there's a lot of people who want to do freelance, and there's a lot of grey areas around freelance. So to have someone actually give some information on it is
you have to be very practical. There's a lot of rules involved. For any of these companies to work with you, you have to usually go through a lot of
hoops
discovery, and they have to you have to sign your life away, and they need to know a lot about your business and stuff. So unless you're prepared to do it properly, I would say don't bother. But once you get there, once you get through all the hoops and stuff, I got to work with the Substance guys and stuff being released in the moment where I did some motion graphics real-time work, which I'd never thought I'd ever do, but I'm doing that with them. Once you get through all the practical stuff, it's really rewarding. But it's hard work.
It's fantastic. Like, I really, really appreciate coming on and taking the time. I know this is in your evening, in your sort of personal time.
Yeah, no worries, man.
But everyone who's listening, remember to like the video, follow, subscribe, share it. It helps spread the word of the podcast, because the guys who come on really share some useful information. But Ronan, my man, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Alex.
Peace out, guys.